The last growing season was brutal due to the heat. So I'm organizing my garden to cut cost and have a good harvest. First off, I'm really pleased with my self-watering system so far. These clay pots cost me $22 for 4, which is about $6 per pot. On the other hand, the peanut containers I use to saturate the soil with water cost around $2.50 from Aldi's, and I get peanuts in the process. They're cheaper, but don't do the same thing as the clay pots. I'll show you what I mean. Recently, I lifted up one of the pots and could clearly see that roots from plants already in the ground have found the clay pots as a water source. But saturating the soil is the next best thing for getting water to roots underground. So, using a combination of the two increases my planting effectiveness while lowering my cost. Since we're talking about water, I had already set up a rainwater catchment system, but realized last season that I needed a little bit more. So, over the winter, I once again went to Facebook Marketplace and found 2 more 55-gallon barrels that cost me $15 each. By adding those 2 extra barrels, I may have problems to overcome in my garden, but water is not one of them, and my system was cheap and easy to set up. I've also learned my plants respond well to bone meal around the roots when planting them in the ground. It helps with root development, and just a little goes a long way. So I save bones and make my own. It's a simple matter of putting them into my Instant Pot and letting them cook for 2 hours. From there, I can put the softened bones on a tray to dry them in the oven or sun-dry them outside. Once the bones are dry, I use a hammer to break them up a little, and then put that into a blender to crunch it into a fine powder. I had 2 containers of bones that gave me almost 2 pounds of bone meal. I'm also happy to report my seed starting is going along quite well. The double cup method has saved me having to buy a lot of soil, and the plants can stay in the cups right up to the point of planting them in the garden. The snail method is also working well, and the new batch of heat-tolerant Boxcar Willie tomatoes germinated this time. I also found out as the plants get bigger, I can unroll the snail to add more dirt to give the roots more room until I'm ready to plant them. This season, I'm using plants that are heat tolerant and possibly native to the area. I like green beans, but rather than going with bush beans, I plan to use vine beans that are more productive. I wanted a small trellis for them in the middle of one of the long beds to provide shade for the kale I plan to place near them. The easiest thing to do was to put in stakes on either side of the long bed. I used 1x2 stakes I had lying around and simply cut the ends into a sharp point for easy hammering into the ground. With that done, I came back and drilled holes so I could once again use the eye screws I used for the sweet potato vines, along with string to make the trellis. It may not be Instagram ready, but cost me nothing because I used what I had on hand. I encourage saving your seeds and use some of my saved vining bean seeds. I soak them overnight and then place 6 on each side of the trellis. I can always come back and add more length to the stakes if I need extra height, and the kale will get a little shade from the sun. Speaking of native plants, before you rush out and buy them, consider exchanging either with your gardening friends, through Facebook group seed exchanges, or even library seed exchanges as a means of getting the seeds you want without having to buy them. A good example of that is I wanted to grow Seminole pumpkins that are native to Florida and grow well in the heat. My friend Liz in Orlando had some and mailed me enough to get started. They will be part of my shade cover for the long beds because they grow like crazy, can fight off the vine borer, and can be trellised. Once they take off, I plan to train them into a pumpkin tunnel using the shade cover frame I made last year. Not only will they provide shade for the long beds, but these pumpkins can be stored up to a year. And all of that came from simply exchanging seeds. I'll do another video on the heat-tolerant plants that are on the way either from exchanges or purchase. But overall, I've spent a lot less money to start my growing season. And I hope you've gotten some ideas on how to cheaply start yours. See you next time.